Um, so I have asked Rob to share their experience, strength, and hope with us.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob. I'm a heroin addict. My sobriety or clean date's March 25th, 2012. I have a sponsor. Currently not sponsoring anybody at the moment, but I'm taking applications. But let's see here. I've been through the big book about 4 or 5 times. No, I've been through it 4 times with 4 different sponsors. I'm going through it again with a 5th. It all started when I was in high school. My first time, it started with alcohol for me. My first time drinking, I was probably 13 or 14 years old, and I went over to the next door neighbors. There's a bunch of girls over there that were like 17, 18 years old, and it was like, probably, the cooler girls in school, and went over there, and they're having a Christmas party, and I don't know what I was drinking, but I had 6 of them, and I got the spins, and the thing was, like, the parents were having their party upstairs, and the kids were having their party downstairs, and I had 6 whatever woo-woos, what I was drinking, whatever that is, and my dad comes downstairs. I'm sitting in the chair. I got the spins, and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great." Projectile vomit all over him, and all over myself. And so we start walking back home, and he goes, "We're gonna have a long talk in the morning." And I was like, "Dad, I was just experimenting, no big deal." And that long talk never happened. Through high school, I drank on the weekends, every weekend. I smoked weed every day, and I never had any consequences during that time. Like, I got straight A's in school. I wouldn't say straight A's, but I basically straight A's and a couple B's here and there. I did pretty well in school. I did well in sports, and I went to college down at Florida Gulf Coast University, and when I got down there, I was like, this is going to be great. Because when you go on a tour at those schools, like they bring you by like the campus, they bring you by the beach, and I'm like, this is perfect. Like, I'm gonna be able to study by the beach right next to these girls, and I'm gonna do so well here. And like, my dorm room was like when I say beach, it was like a little lake front, with like a little sand area, and my dorm was like 10 yards from it, and I was like, this is perfect. And anyways, during that time I got DWI or DUI down there, and I never thought like I had a problem with anything. I just thought I was being young and stupid at the time, and I just had to be more careful. And I met the girl in my dreams down there when I was 18 years old, and she had a pill problem with OxyContin, and I've done it a couple of times prior to that with my cousin, and my cousin lived on the other side of Florida, and I went to go see him, and I brought back like a ton of pills. And I was like, hey, we should do it, do these just responsibly. Yeah. And like, to be honest, I really didn't like know what I was getting myself into. And it started off doing it like once in a while, and then all of a sudden it was on the weekends, and all was, very quickly, probably within 3 weeks, it was an everyday thing. It felt like I finally found the best thing in the world. Like, that's what it felt like. I felt like Superman when I was doing that stuff. It felt unstoppable. I felt confident. I just loved every second of it. And, I like everybody else, I started waking up in the morning, and I was like, why does my back hurt? Why am I sweating? Why is my nose stuffy? Why does my knees hurt? Or, going to bed at night, like, why can't I sleep without this? And, it just, I didn't know anything about, drug addiction or alcoholism, and I was like, I'm a man and I can beat this. I'm not addicted to this stuff. I just took it a little bit too far. I need some time away from it. And while I was down there ruining my life, I initially signed up for like all the 9 and 8 a.m. classes, and then like moved my classes to like 3 and 4 o'clock because like it was just too hard to get up in the morning at that time, to go to class. So I figured if I moved those classes, I could get there, and I still didn't go. And my mom calls me at the time. It was like my second semester there, and I was doing awful. I was just doing OxyContin all the time, and just pissing away all my money. And she went to rehab for. She was really into the Xanax and prescription drugs, and she goes to this rehab, and she goes, "This is a great place. You should try it." And I was like, "Mom, I'm not the one with the problem. You are." And within the next year, I pawned off all my stuff. You know what I mean? Like, lost everything. I just couldn't get anything going. And it was like right when like the Passages of Malibu commercial was on, and I was like, this looks cool. Like they're doing the stuff with the needles and stuff. Like, he's telling me like I can go to a rehab and I was an addict for 20 years and now I'm not. That's how I thought it was gonna be. And I go to this rehab and it wasn't that. Like, there wasn't the pretty girls in the hot tub working out or anything like that. But anyways, I go to this rehab and I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. Like I said, I had no idea about the disease. And I really thought, I could just get my shit together and then go back out there, drink and smoke weed like a normal person, and just, put the hard stuff on the side. And anyways, I was told to go to a halfway house, and I went to a halfway house. I hung out with the wrong people. I hated the rules. I hated the people running it, and not because of them, but because of me. Like, I just didn't want to do what they were telling me to do. I don't like to be told what to do. And I left after 2 weeks. The first thing I did was I went and got high. I went back up to New York because I thought that if I made a geographical change, my life would change, because things were never really that bad up in New York. Like I said, when I was up there, all I was doing was drinking and smoking weed, and my life was okay. I didn't have any consequences. Within my first week up there, I found that stuff again. I found heroin. I started shooting up. Things got bad. Things got worse. And I spent 6 months there. I went to community college. I played hockey there, and things got really bad at that point. And anyways, I felt like it was time to make another geographical change. So why be miserable in New York when it's snowing out? And why not just go down to like Fort Lauderdale, Florida? I've never been there before. Start out fresh. One of my buddies lives there. He told me I can go room with his girlfriend and her sister that like love cocaine and alcohol. I moved down there, and I started bartending and bussing tables at 2 different restaurants. And within a month, I got fired from both of them. There was one shift, I had to wake up at like I had to be there at like 5 p.m. And I get a phone call like 5:30, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Sorry, I just woke up." And anyways, I just couldn't piece anything together. I really thought, down there that was my life. Like, I'm gonna work these 2 jobs, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drink for free at the bar. I'm going to use all my tips for drugs, and I'm going to pay my rent with my wage. And that's how I got it worked down to a science. Instead, I took every single dollar I made and, went and copped. And, I pawned all my stuff. I literally had nothing left. My mother and my father wouldn't let me in their place. I had no place to go. The girls that I was living with were kicking me out because I couldn't afford rent there, and I wasn't paying them. I didn't have the money to pay them. They thought I stole jewelry, which I really didn't steal. And, that's how people looked at me, like I was a thief. Like I burned every bridge that I could burn. At that point in time, I just had no other bridges to burn. I had no other people to steal from. And like rehab was like, going back to rehab was literally the last thing I wanted to do. And, I didn't even know if I really wanted to get clean or sober yet. I just needed a place to go. So, I was fortunate enough where, I called my mother and she's like, I'll support you with that. Like, I'll try and get you in. She got me into this rehab. And I remember being there. I spilled a lot of shit on my therapist. I remember telling her, this woman just a lot of shit. And same with the people around me. I really felt like I opened up there. And it was suggested to me to go to a halfway house in Florida. And I told them, no, I'm not doing that. And I went to a 3-quarter house in Schenectady, New York instead. And I met, when I went up to this house, I was like, I'm driving up there. It was in March. No, I'm sorry, March. It had to be it was in April, shitty weather like it is right now. And it just looked miserable. It's Schenectady, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, what the fuck am I getting myself into? I walk into this house and there's this like, really old dude that just looked really like, it looked like he just got done like doing meth for the last 50 years. And I was like, holy shit, like why did I agree to come up here? And but there's 2 kids in that 3-quarter house. I was 21 at the time. One was 22 years old and one was 28 years old. And they're both halfway through the steps. They're both going to meetings. They're both doing service. They, and I saw the change in them. Like I saw them being miserable. I saw them being like lazy pieces of shit to like, being like members of society with like a smile on their face, like helping other people and having like a purpose. And I wanted that. I hung out with those 2 guys. They brought me to meetings. I remember, it was always suggested to get a sponsor. I would get a sponsor and I would never call him. I went to the Tuesday nights. One of my buddies, one of those kids in that house, took me to the Tuesday night meeting in Scotia. And outside in front of everybody, he said, "Did you call your sponsor today?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And he goes, "Why don't you give him a call?" And I was like, "I'll call him later." And he goes, "No, why don't you call him now?" I'm like, "Dude, I'll call him later." And then he pokes me in the chest, like, this is a huge dude, like huge Puerto Rican guy. And he goes, why don't you call him right now? I was like, in front of everybody, I was like, wow, I really feel like a bitch, but yes, I'll call him right now. And I called him, and it was weird, because like, to be honest, like, I'm a guy, I feel like I can, like, I'm a man, like, I should be able to handle my own shit. And that's just not the case with this. Like, I can't do this alone. And I called him in front of the kid. And I'm like, "Hey, man, like, I figured I'd give you a call and say hi. This is kind of awkward, but hello." And it was Tuesday night. We met up that Friday night. And he took me out on a nice date. We went out for coffee. We went to the Friday night big book meeting in Niskayuna. And it was at least once or twice a week we'd go to his house and smoke a ton of cigarettes and read out of the big book and go through and work on these 12 steps. And I'd always say to him, because like I would always say to him, like, "Dude, I'm miserable. Like, how long is this gonna last? Because I don't know how much longer I can go for." And he goes, "You can be miserable as long as you want to be miserable for." And that meant, like, stop being lazy and do the work. Pick up the pen, start writing that 4-step. And, I did that. Like, I remember doing my 4-step in, like, 2 weeks. All I did is sit in the room for a couple hours, just every night, just tearing it up. And I remember, doing that 5th step and telling all my secrets with this other, with this man. And and him helping me get through it as, like, a witness to God. And it was just, like, I remember leaving that house and just, like, it wasn't that, like, lightning bolt or anything like that, but my thinking changed that day. Like I remember just music sounded different. Like it felt like I felt like so much better. It just felt like I had, I was carrying around two trash bags, and I finally just let them go. And my sponsor always said, like, you should try and pray. You should try and pray. And I try and pray. And I felt like I prayed to nothing. And I remember, the morning after I did my fifth step, I remember waking up in the morning, and I this has never happened to me before, and I was like, I should pray. And I really felt like I prayed, and like it was for the first time it felt like I wasn't praying to nothing. Like it finally felt like I had a purpose. Like I finally felt like I was praying to something. Didn't know what it was, but I was praying to something greater than me. And my life just started getting better and better as I kept going through those like amends through 10, 11, and 12. I moved out of that 3-quarter house and moved into a house in Schenectady. I remember thinking I was so cool going to Schenectady County Community College, trying to get my grades up and paying them in cash. For paying for all my books in cash. I thought it was so cool. And I went there for like a semester, got my grades up, and the next 3 years I transferred to another college in North Carolina. And I was literally going to school for like a semester, going up to Jersey City. When I was in Jersey City, I had some really cool experiences. I got a new sponsor there. I worked through the steps. I got to meet like Mark Wahlberg, Justin Timberlake, like Eli Manning. It was really cool. And that's just from like this program, and like what kind of opportunities I got only because like I went through these steps and through the book. And I would go back to North Carolina, I'd go up to Saratoga, North Carolina, Saratoga, and then the last 2 years I was in Port St. Lucie, Florida, Saratoga, Port St. Lucie, Florida, and I just got back up to Saratoga 2 weeks ago. And literally, every single year my life just keeps getting better and better. There are times like when I stop, when I slack on my program, like I stop doing 10, 11, and 12, and my life gets bad. Like I don't necessarily think about picking up or getting high or anything like that, but like for me it's not about that anymore. It's about like how happy do I want to be, and I know that when I do 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis, when I'm helping other people, my life's good. Like I never have a bad day when I'm doing that shit consistently, and it's an amazing feeling. And it's stupid that I don't do that every single day, because that's the real solution for me. But anyways, I got a little passage to read. We had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution of these bedevilments more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. When we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. And I just brought up that passage because I felt like all those things, like the personal relationships, my emotions, misery and depression, couldn't make a living, that feeling of uselessness, the fear, being unhappy, couldn't help anybody else, like that was me without God in my life. And as soon as I started like finding God through the 12 steps, those things started disappearing. But yeah, I think that's all I got for tonight. But thanks for letting me share.
Thank you.